Hi everyone, my name is Sita, and I would like to present to you a presentation tool which is called, interestingly, Present. So it runs in the browser, and it is written in the Go programming language. So some words about Go. It is developed at Google. The first public release was available for the public in 2009. And it feels like a very modern C version made for the 21st century. And it also resembles to Python in many aspects. For instance, it has dynamic arrays, it has built-in dictionaries, and so on. And it is a compiled language. So if you are not satisfied with the speed of Python, you can try Go. So in the past few years, I've been doing Python programming. But recently I got interested in Go, and as I was watching Go videos on YouTube, I noticed that almost all the presentations were done with this presentation software that you can see here. And I saw a very interesting feature that these slides included source code snippets. And there is a button, Run, and if you click on it, then you can see the output of the source code. So this program is running, and you can see the output. So I think it's very nice. You can also say it's a killer feature, and I like it very much. And my first idea was, hey, can I use it for Python? Can I insert Python code snippets in the code? In the documentation, I didn't find anything about it. It was only talking about Go code snippets, but I gave it a try. And actually, it was producing something, but the output was not what I was expecting. So it was doing something. And as I watched the output, I noticed that this output is actually the output of the env command. So what is happening here is this presentation tool was prepared for Python or for any scripting languages, but the first line was not parsed correctly. So it parsed the first line until the first byte space, and the rest of the line was skipped. So it executed always just env. So it was the bad news that there was a bug in this presentation tool. I looked at the source code, and I managed to find the file socket.go, which is responsible for executing Go programs and eventually Python scripts. I could correct this bug. I sent a bug report, a patch, and a few days later it was integrated. So if you install this presentation tool, then you will get the correct version. So the good news is that with this you can execute any kind of scripting languages, like Python 2. You can execute Python 3. You get the output. You can even use it for Ruby or for Bash. Maybe not. So here are some links. I have a blog. I wrote about it, and you can check out the package present on the second link. You just need to write a file whose syntax is similar to Markdown. So the conclusion is next to Prezi and PowerPoint, you can put this present on your toolbelt, and it's especially useful if you want to include code snippets in your presentation and you want to execute it and show the result of the code. And it is suitable, it is ready for Go code snippets, and it is ready for any scripting languages where the first line starts with a shebang. If you want to use it for other compiled languages, like C for instance, then you will have to code a little bit, 20 lines of code, you can do it. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Like standing in the spotlight. Hello, my name is Igor, and I would like to talk with you actually about why you all should learn to program. So a show of hands, please. Who here considers themselves a programmer? And who here knows how to program? It's not quite the same people? Okay. And that's a good thing, yeah? Okay, so this is a condensed version of a 1-hour rant by a guy called Teth about why programming is terrible. And that is actually the reason why you should learn programming, because software is eating the world. And everybody is talking about this thing called algorithmic literacy, how it's becoming more and more important for people to be able to read source code. So that's one reason, because everything is turning into software, and these days all software is turning into websites or web apps or whatever. So yeah, it is becoming more and more important for people, for all kinds of people, to learn how to program. But that isn't the only reason. Another reason is because each of you might have a different kind of approach to how to solve a specific problem. And that might either be because you have certain expertise, or because simply you have a different background. You're bringing a different voice. I don't know, you might have bad eyesight and not be able to see what time I have left running. For instance, that is a completely valid approach. Or you might bring a completely different background culturally and say, okay, this solution that we have brought forward might not be the best. So whatever the reason is, you should learn to program. You should bring your knowledge to this field and tell programmers how to solve it, because this is the most important part about programming. Isn't to know how to code. It is, you need to know the domain, the problem domain that you're solving, whichever that is. Like if it's accounting, for instance, you should have some form of accounting background, otherwise you're going to be sitting there and thinking about all those 3 classes of accounts. Like we have a basic account, and then we have some kind of inheritance, and then we have a very specialized Visa account or whatever, and that doesn't make any sense to normal people. So if you're bringing forward a special domain knowledge, that can help solve problems more easy. Yeah, that's it. Who here is currently learning to program? How are you doing? Who wants to who wants to comment on this? Because when you start out programming, when you want to learn programming and you go ask your friends who know how to program, they all have very, very, very set opinions about what you should learn. And most of those opinions are shit. Because it's like, this is how I learned to program, and this is the way you should learn to program. And that's normally not the case, because technology moves on so fast that these days we probably have better tools than 5 or 10 years ago when they learned to program. So it's kind of hard to give an advice here for those people who are learning to program, because it is useful to be able to go to your friends and say, hey, I'm stuck here, I need your help, on one hand, and on the other hand, it's really frustrating to have to retrace all of their mistakes. Yeah, because you should be making your own mistakes. You should be failing hard and making your own experiences and sharing your pain with the next generation of programmers and problem solvers and world builders. And yeah, that's basically the thing that when you set out to learn programming, you should ask yourself, what is it that I want to build?
Yes, sorry.
That's all I have.
So hello, my name is Constantine. All right, 5 minutes started already. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about, whoa, what is happening there? All right, I'm gonna talk about, about multi-language docs in reverse, which is, I'm gonna explain later why is it called that way. Okay, so this is me on Twitter. I just want to start with that, just to PR myself. All right, next. This is the challenge that some people are putting now. That some people are trying to display today. And the challenge is that English is the primary language of the development. And okay, all right. We need the developer. We need the developer documentation in other languages. This is what we call multi-language documentation. And in a perfect world, that is okay. And in a perfect world, developers write the documentation in English because they're English speakers, and the community, which is open source and free and all this stuff, they contribute to the translations. Yay! This is all very good. And the solution for this challenge has been presented before by Marcus. I want to talk about a different challenge, the real one, because we're in Europe, and in Europe most people don't speak English as their native language. In Europe, people speak different languages, lots of them, but the developer documentation should remain in English. And that's my opinion. You may disagree with that, you may agree with that. But basically, you have to agree with that the developer documentation must exist in English. It may exist in other languages as well, but it must exist in English. So the real challenge is that we have another language which is primary for development, and we need the developer docs in English, and only English, which is my remark. So in real world, developers can more or less read in English in order to be developers. And there are one or two persons in the company who can write in English, more or less. So they are called the kind of documentation department. As Shwetang from Opera said, again, he was also the only one in the documentation department, as myself. So, by the way, these people who are writers, they do not necessarily have the necessary technical knowledge. So they may just know English and they may be able to express their thoughts in English. They are not necessarily developers. So we have this problem that different people have different knowledges which we must combine in order to achieve good English documentation. So the solution for this problem, for this challenge, is let people do what they're best at. So developers are best at developing, and developers do understand their code. Developers can also read English documentation, so let them do that. And we get people who can write in English, so let them do that. Don't let them understand the development process. So readers, keep on reading. This is I'm really not very good with BASIC. I know there's probably a mistake there. All right, so D means developers, W means writers. So this is the cycle that should be repeated until the developer docs are complete. And I'm assuming that we already have some documentation ready, because this is usually the case. So the developers should review existing docs because they can read. The developers can comment using instruments like Google Docs or WordInline. I like WordInline more. WordInline. Okay, any other instrument would do. Then, according to those comments, the writers rewrite the text. So in this 30 step, the writers should contact very closely with developers to understand what the thought originally was. so that the rewriting would be more successful. Then go to 10 and repeat until we succeed. But sometimes we don't have any existing developer documentation. So in this case, you ain't Shakespeare, I don't know why I read that. So developers aren't Shakespeare's, so don't let them write. And I'm talking not about those great American developers who are awesome writers, I guess. I mean, in real world, developers can barely write in their own language, and so don't let them really write in English. That'll just, that's a spend of time. So write the docs in your native language. That's what I tell our developers. Just write it in your own words, because you know how it works. Try to express it. Then I would try to understand it. I would ask him a lot of questions and rewrite it in English. Please note that I didn't write translate to English. This is not the job of writer. Translating is the job of a translator. Writer should write. So a real writer should understand and rewrite it in English so that it would be a normal text. Then go to previous.
Sorry, Constantine.
Yeah. Oh, is it already? Okay, so okay. That's a very small because they're adorable.
Hi everyone. I'm Christophe van Tomme, and I'm going to do a really short introduction to Dita, my partner in crime. You know where are you, Mikey? Do you want to join? So, what is Dita? Dita is an open standard that was originally created by IBM. But they actually did a good job, I think, right? So, basically the idea was to create something that makes it much easier for people to collaborate and to reuse documentation. Because when you're translating, when you're creating a lot of documentation, you have to translate it in a lot of languages. It can get really expensive.
And you publish it in different outputs as well.
Yeah. So basically, Dita, in very short, it's topic-oriented, meaning that you, instead of having, like you're trying to make everything really small and chunky. If you know Karen McGrain, that's what she's been preaching. Instead of book-oriented, like DocBook, it's using conrefs for transclusion. And transclusion means that you take a bit of content from here and you include it somewhere else. It uses conditional text and a lot of metadata. And the three core topic types, so the three types of content that you have are tasks, concepts, and references. And then you can evolve them. That's where the name Darwin Information Type Architecture comes from. You can evolve them into different other things. And you can make your own specializations. So the tricks. If you want to take one of the, just go ahead. Okay. So structured writing. It's basically, instead of prose, so Dita Information Type Architecture really is an engineering tool. So it's a way to engineer your content. So instead of having like a flowing narrative style of doing documentation, you really engineer it. I think that's the best way to understand how it works. It types the information. So what I was talking about earlier about concepts, references, and tasks is that instead of saying like, well, I'm going to explain you this section of the site, it says, okay, here's what you have to know about nodes. Nodes is this concept. That's a concept, it explains what a node is. Then here's how you configure a node, and that's a task. And it's a single topic that explains how to do that step by step. And then you have references, which is kind of like the API documentation that we're all used to.
Well, it's also a way of describing UI as well.
Yeah.
So if you have, it's based on, a lot of times you use Dita to write task-focused documentation. So let's say you have a central task, and then you have all the supporting UI topics. It's saying, here's all the user interface elements you need to use in order to accomplish this end-to-end sort of use case.
Yeah, so you can basically chain a bunch of tasks one after the other, and like do a longer goal that way.
And if you're writing topic-oriented, then you can also reuse these tasks in different books.
That's the next slide.
There we go.
Topic-based authoring,
Right.
which is basically this idea that instead of writing a long book, you make individual chunks, and then you place those into a map.
Right.
And that's really cool.
And I'd also like to elaborate on that because Kelly was talking about how users come to you when they're already frustrated, they want to solve something. So when you break things out into topics, instead of having a book with a really long story, you help people find the content that they need.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you break it down into smaller, manageable chunks, especially when you have online output
Yeah.
for your docs, where it's not a PDF. So if you're navigating an online help system, it makes it a lot easier to manage.
So you can, and it makes it a lot cheaper to translate also, because the individual chunks can be translated.
Well, that's more of the single sourcing because you maintain
Yeah.
your documentation in source files.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
So the output you can compile it into anything.
Yeah. And then I was looking for a better way to explain conditional text.
We're having some trouble with the analogy in the slide.
So conditional text, that's another of the tools that they use in Dita, is that you can have one topic that, depending on the circumstances, gives you a different output. So for example, a Windows user would see different outputs than a Mac user. And you can basically create one single topic that addresses those both use cases, and then you show different stuff depending on who's looking at it.
Right.
And I couldn't find another one for this one, but 6 seconds. It's transclusion. It's the idea that you can take one topic from here and include it somewhere else. And then the last one, minimalism, and that's last slide. So that's the idea that you make small stuff. You don't make
You
long,
strip it down, and which also helps you when you reuse it later. So if you simplify your content, and then you add the conditional text and also variables, which you didn't actually mention here.
Yeah.
But so you can beef it up depending on what your audience output or format is.
Exactly.
So.
Thank you.